All right, we are up and running. Okay, welcome to 20x Phase 2. Another episode of this exciting pilot proposal FedRAMP Shark Tank. Here today we have a fun one, which is Paramify. He's one of the most vocal participants in Phase 1. The kind of the OG. I think they did what, like 300 FedRAMP 20x authorizations in Phase 1. Like it was pretty insane.
Something like that. Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing how things have changed. I mean, Phase 1 was pretty easy, but Phase 2, a bit more complicated. Emu,
yeah.
Are you looking for anything special here today?
I don't know. I mean, I've had to log into Paramify a lot, so I'm excited to see how things will change for Phase 2.
Yes. Fortunately, they are changing. They're changing, fortunately, for all involved. And so, yeah, I appreciate everybody's patience in the last phase, but we're really excited about what we built on. So, do you just want me to get in?
We are definitely happy to see. I think for me, the big thing I'm looking for is like, all right, Phase 1 was pretty easy, KSIs. Now we added 100 plus new requirements and recommendations. How is this cloud service going to address them? So,
okay.
Kenny, over to you. For your team, you've got 20 minutes. Give us the pitch. Why should you be in Phase 2?
All right, let's just get right into it. It is so good to see all of you again. It's been a couple months, right? So I'm just happy to see you guys. We're just going to get right into our approach, right? What's different about Paramify and how are we addressing the things that we think are going to be really helpful for other companies that are going to be doing Phase 2. The thing that we're always focused on is really helping people establish a complete and accurate risk profile for their entire organization right at the outset, right? So what are the people, processes, and technology that you're using to secure what kind of data? And for cloud security, it's usually pretty standard. We organize them into these 6 different categories. At the top, you have solution specific risk solutions, right? So you have the core application. So for example, this would be our Paramify cloud app that's in the very tiny center of our giant red boundary, right? We have the Paramify cloud. Some people have managed services, which change risk profile for them. Hopefully there's a support system for that particular solution. And users, of course, are going to have their responsibilities as well. And we want that to be very clear for people what is needed for a particular stack that is coming in. So workspace settings, really typical. How do you configure this so that it's secure? Authentication methods is pretty common. You provide that FICAM stuff. Data sharing policy is going to be specific to the end user, what kind of data they're going to allow to put in there. Now, these particular areas are supported by these other areas, which you typically see: organization level risk solutions, collaboration suites, human resources solutions, risk management, threat awareness to spike everybody's spidey senses when the right things come around. You have general IT risk, which we call tech ops, and that's usually vast, everything from application delivery to observability, network hosting, whatever it is. InfoSec is also really important, it turns out. Identity and access management, cloud, security operations, vulnerability management. These things we help people get started right away so that they can start getting value out of the platform and even the first hour or so. I used to actually do a lot of data center audits back in the day. So some of our customers historically have had actually data centers. So we'll ask them a question of something like, where are you deployed? And they'll be like, yeah. And so they'll have data center, they'll have Google Cloud, they'll have AWS. And these things can be really tricky if data centers are involved. Now for you guys, you don't even care about data centers, right? Because you're assuming that they're using a hyperscaler, right? So why is that? Why do you not care? It's because everybody's actually transferring these risks to the hyperscalers. So these things, you get them for free. And that's how it's built out in Paramify. This is what we call a risk solution. A risk solution is simply, how you address a particular risk. And usually that risk solution is going to be associated with capabilities, and those are usually mapped to requirements, be they a standard or controls. So here in this thing, physical access provisioning maps to these legacy requirements over here. And then, for CMMC, all the assessment criteria like early, redundant, but, I don't know, maybe for high, we can get these in for 20x, I don't know. So we make that really easy at the very beginning where you deployed, and that's going to set that particular risk profile. It's not that you don't have it, it's that you transferred the risk somewhere else. So let's go back to InfoSec again. We're back at here. I'll show you another one that's pretty common. This is like single sign-on. Okay. Now, here we have all sorts of different components in our library. We're working with a number of these companies already in Paramify. You can implement these by yourself, and what happens when you do that is it sets up the inheritance structure according to how you build the component. So here, I'm not seeing all that green that I saw in that last slide, right? This is, there's things for me to do, right? And what's cool about Paramify now, as we've taken my embarrassing prototype that I had a couple of years ago, we've put that into the platform. And now what you can do is, as stacks within your organization or in your workspace implement, their profile, if they implement a solution, which is pretty common, you'll have an IT stack that implements Octa on behalf of the entire organization. And then the other stacks can come in and say, oh yeah, I want to adopt that implemented solution, and I want to go from there. So let's look at what that looks like. You have this IT stack right here. And some of the things it looks like I'm getting for free by simply adopting the solution, if that makes sense. And now it looks like in here, I have some responsibilities to do. So it's not that I don't do anything, but with my product team, I at least need to make sure that I'm proving that I am consuming that specific Octa implementation. And so that will involve some sort of configuration. Let me go into Paramify. I'm going to go back to the project that we did last time. So this was our 20x low environment. I'm just going to show you, it'll be familiar. We have implemented all of them now, right? All of those KSIs. Let's just kind of go into those. What does it look like? So here's the KSIs, and they are, these are all implemented. And I want to go and show you what's going to be really important in phase 2, something that we didn't have before. It was kind of just us working with Jordan and you. How are you comfortable that this is actually validated? So one thing that we implemented in Paramify right after we submitted in August was automated validations and automated evidence collection. So I'm going to go into the details of how that happens. So for SVCO2, encrypt everything, right? That's going to be a lot of different validations that are happening, right? So this is probably going to evolve in terms of the UI, but let me show you how we would validate at least one of these things, which would influence the implementation status of this risk solution or of this solution capability, sorry, and therefore the KSI that it's tied to. You can have, all sorts of different partials and fully passed and whatever. So one thing that we think is really important in Paramify is that we're transparent with how we collect evidence. I've used like platforms before, and it's nice if you have an integration that says, yeah, all of your AWS accounts are using MFA, but that's not really the full story for us. For us, implementing MFA involves, well, a special Google directory group, which syncs with our Octa account, which is configured and has a FIPS YubiKey tied to it. It's also tied to our identity and access management configuration in AWS, and also the Amazon SSO service, which changed the name. I forgot what it's called. I think Identity Center, something like that. But For me, it's SSO. And so these were what we did last time, and these are the things that Jordan validated, and that will continue. And we're actually getting a lot of traction with a lot of our clients, which are starting to build using these things and build out that capability. So we like that. The flexibility is really important. I don't know what your experience is. We have this thing called evidence validations. And so these will be really transparent for you to view in the assessor view. You can see, why am I comfortable with RDS SSL enforcement? And so when I go to this particular one, I see this validation rule. It's just simply looking, hey, does this group match this group? You know, and those are the results that are coming from that script that runs, right? So Paramify listens. We're going to be listening. This evidence set is going to be listening for these validations at all time. I'm going to show you kind of what that looks like. So Isaac sent these to me real quick. So this is what it would look like if it passed, right? So this is the result of that script, okay? And this becomes this evidence set. And this artifact says 27 equals 27. We expect that to pass. 3 equals 3. If I look at this partial one, it's going to be different. 27 does not equal 5. 3 equals 3. So this one, we would expect S3 to fail and RDS to pass. And just, you know, for completeness, oh, that's the pass again, sorry. For completeness, we've got 30 does not equal 10 and 6 does not equal 2. So I'm going to just drag it in. This can be received by API. That's how we do it, okay? Like how it's turned out. So these ones were older, right? Those passed earlier in our initial thing, although you didn't see those cool things right there, but those are the same evidences that passed. Okay, so let's do that pass one. So that's going to come in, and we can see that passed, right? RDS SSL, you see that passed. The partial is going to be partial, right? You can see that the SSL failed and the RDS thing passed. And then we've got, I bet you this is going to fail. So you got the fail. So what this unlocks is this evidence set can be tied. In fact, this evidence validation can be tied to a solution capability, which is tied to the KSI. And it can be a many-to-many mapping in our experience. And so, you know, a single validation could actually fail several KSIs or maybe just one, just depending on what it is, right? But you kind of need that flexibility today is what we've shown, right? So that will continue, and there will be a few more robust features that coming up in the future. So let's go back into this presentation. So let's assume that, you know, we implement all of those things after we do intake and, you know, everything's going good, right? So now what we can do is like, hey, something failed. Okay. I'm like, oh, dude, why did it fail, man? I thought I set up all of the automated KSIs. What's going on? And I see a sea of green, but I see this little red turd right there. So I'm like, what do I do to fix this? And so I'm going to go into it, and I can see that all of these capabilities are passing. And if we're in Rev 5 world, like it's a world of hurt, right? In Rev 2, you guys are a little bit more like reasonable, right? It's just like one KSI, but not everybody's the same. So why did this fail? So I can see that I'm getting the right thing from my provider, but my responsibility isn't done. Okay, so what happens when it's not really possible for me to automate it? There's some sort of judgment or attestation that needs to come into place. And so this is actively being developed right now. But let me kind of show you this one. So this is like a quarterly access review. Let's say that we have to do this every quarter. And what we're going to see, this is obviously Figma here, but this is what's being actively developed. You can see that, oh, I have something to do. And I can go, oh, okay, here's my access list. And I can just answer the things. Has this been reviewed? Oh, yeah, definitely. Was this review done in a timely manner? Of course it was. We just, did this really fast, right? And so now we can see that's passed, right? And so what happens is that goes green, and now, we're copacetic, right? We're good to go. So we're really excited about this. This is the way to do it, right? You have simple risks that are affecting your organization. You have solutions that have many capabilities, which are tied to requirements, both, policy requirements and like controls as well, right? And what we think is really exciting is where we can kind of bring this, this machine readable file that we produce as part of the assessment, we can ingest those into our trust center, right? And, you could see like, hey, there's a problem here and there's a problem here. And you could get right into it in Paramify. You could just log in and you could see that kind of granularity of where it is. And so we really want to tie, our trust center, to FedRAMP in a way. This is not, we're working on that integration right now. I was messaging Pete about this. We're working really hard to make sure that these things are synced. But if I go onto every trust center, including Paramify, we're guilty too. Everything says green, 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 right? It's always like green. Is there any problem? No, there's never problems. Of course there are problems, right? And we really want to make it just really easy to understand and put things in context, and I think that we have a really big opportunity with the way that we're approaching it, right? So anyways, we do have the capability, but we're really excited for how this is going so far. These programs, everything in these programs over here, I think you guys had the assessment view, and this is what was assessed before, and we're going to take a similar approach going forward. Of course, you can still, get that, export that machine readable file, which we can put on a schedule now, and the idea is that the trust center consumes that file so that you have that kind of visibility, like exactly what you see in Paramify. So that's kind of that just gives a background on our approach, and I don't know, we can go into more questions if you want. Oh yeah, we can talk about roadmap as well, if you want to talk about that as well, because there's certain things that aren't done yet. So let me just go over this really fast, and then we can get into questions, and you guys can, Jordan, you can talk through your piece as well. Okay, so the things that we have shipped that are working is the ability to fetch the evidence and the API that's listening always. That is working, and we have several clients that are using it, and we're using that. Our goal again is to have, we will for sure get over the 70% automation, and the rest of the stuff will be done with the attestation, where it's, there's some sort of judgment that's needed as per the requirement. Validation of evidence works, as you saw, and we have the very beginning of the assessment portal. It's definitely in the beta phase, and there will be some improvements that come out by the time you guys see this in January, if we're selected, right? So Trust Center is that integration that we were talking about is actively being developed. We think Q1, and the VDR standard is in active development. I think that's actually going to be done pretty soon. Oh, yep, that should be done this month. So significant change notification is a really cool thing that involves snapshots of the data, right? So comparing snapshots between different timelines AI is really good at that kind of summary information as long as it's prompted correctly. So we're excited about that capability. And then we have the automated inventory management, which was not necessarily a 20x thing, but I think will be helpful for the overall story. So those are, what we're doing so far. So not scripted or anything. So want it to be interactive at this point. Jordan, do you want to say your piece or something?
Yeah, before we go into Q&A, we'd love to hear from Jordan and Coldfire about how Coldfire is going about this assessment, and what it's going to look like. I think the highlight, we've explicitly structured the 20x assessment process to look different than a traditional Rev 5 assessment, and we're hoping to hear about how you're going about that.
For sure. So I have a couple components to present here. One moment.
Oh, Yep, let me.
I think I should just be able to bump through. Hopefully. All right, y'all have the deck up there?
Yep, we got it.
All right, so I think before pivoting into that, from the low pilot now going into the moderate pilot, I've always had an account within the Paramify platform that allows me to go in and look at what they're actually doing in terms of the KSIs. Pete, I can read your lips. I know what you're talking about. I'm glad you discovered it. Regardless, I'm able to go in there, see everything that they're showing you, right? And the Paramify team, like we've got our Slack integration. We're ultra collaborative. Isaac says he needs me. We hop on a call. I'm seeing what he's showing me. We're talking back and forth. We're making sure that what they're doing meets the KSIs, meets the standards, the recommendations, the requirements, and expectations of FedRAMP. So what we put together here from a Coldfire standpoint was more of a high-level approach to what we're doing when it comes to any of the 20x assessments. And this is designed to ensure we are assessing with some level of uniformity when it comes to the different products that we look at, but also understanding that each CSP is going to be bringing their own flavor of how they do 20x. The principles that we've identified are around completeness, accuracy, timeliness, and handling of exceptions. We know not everything is going to be able to be automated. Those first three are kind of tied to that automation piece. That fourth one is more talking about, hey, what are we going to do for those cases where we can't automate things? How are we going to present that information and still build some type of assurance story that makes sense to we as a 3PAO, FedRAMP, and ultimately the agency and other B2B consumers that come down the road? We took what you guys had structured from the 7 questions in the assessment piece of phase 2 and wanted to give some information around, how Coldfire is looking at those, what we intend to do specifically in Paramify's case. We want to make sure that we're looking at all of those recommendations and requirements, taking the KSIs, saying, hey, Paramify, tell me how you interpret this, and then show me how you do it. What type of data are you looking at? Show me the code that you're using to generate the machine-readable output, and then show me how you're marrying everything together in the platform. That was the model that we used in phase 1. Within phase 2, we're going to be adding some of those additional elements around the actual automation frequency of when they're going to be able to produce that data, how it ultimately presents itself, to me as the assessor, to the end consumer who is looking at a dashboard, and making sure that it is representative of, what is in place and what isn't in place. We know that perfection isn't always attainable. We do want to be transparent about any of the risks that are there. And we want to be able to work with Paramify to ensure that we are conveying the same message that they believe they were conveying to us as part of the assessment process. And so what are we going to do in situations where something isn't implemented? Well, we want to make sure that Paramify has the right information to work from. Again, we are not the ones making any type of interpretations or telling them, what is and isn't right. We're looking at the KSIs, we're applying them in as an objective manner as possible and listing out anywhere where we might see a gap. Hey, you guys have some type of output here. It's really not coming in at like a frequency that makes sense based on the potential variability of that data. That's the type of feedback that we're going to be providing to Paramify to support their assessment efforts. Looking at things from more of the technical automation capabilities, we want to understand, one, are you looking at the right thing? Are you looking at the right population for that thing? And is it coming in on the right frequency to allow us to have some level of confidence around that measurement and whatever dashboard of information is being shared with us? From an automation validation testing approach, again, we want applicability for all KSIs where it's possible. I think the threshold we're looking at right now is that 70%. We want to look at the actual logic within the code, making sure that, any of those failure conditions do make sense. Kenny gave a great example, right? Hey, we have 27 RDS assets. If that number doesn't equal 27 for what we're looking for, that's likely an issue. Again, we want to take considerations for, what's a partial implementation, what's kind of a full failure, and make that as representative as possible in our reporting. Inventory, again, this is like one of the things that we really drill into, right? Because if we can't like understand the footprint, then everything else kind of just cascades into failure on top of that. We need to know what's in scope. From there, we're taking the standards around, minimum assessment scope, ensuring that any assets that are going to be processing federal information, anything that's going to support the whole CIA triad around that federal information is included in those KSIs. And so, you might have a whole S3 footprint. Well, if all you're looking at is RDS, like that's a big gap. And we're going to want to need to know, everything from databases to containers to network devices, and ensuring that the KSIs that apply to those are in fact represented within those populations. As far as overall integrity goes, again, this is just tying back to the logic, making sure that, we have the checks correctly, that, each of the KSIs are being appropriately measured, and that at the end of the day, automation is in place so that we're not having to go and ask for screenshots of specific things, look at point in time evidence when there is possibility for something that can be generated on a more as needed basis. And then the last piece, this is really just tying together everything around frequency, right? Do we have persistent, regular, scheduled processes around demonstrating those KSIs? That's what I'm going to be asking the Paramify team. Like, hey, when we look at this, how often is this data changing, right? If you have some static resources and you're pulling them once a week, that might be fine. But if you have, your dev team out there who's, pushing things every hour, and we see heavy variability in those resources, maybe weekly is not good enough in that case. Maybe you want to be looking at it in a little bit more of a persistent manner. And again, we want to have those conversations with Paramify to make sure that they make sense, because not everything needs to be, near real time. That might be too overburdensome, but there might be some things where that is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But
I have an anecdote there. At the evidence that level, you'll very clearly see that frequency of how often we expect to see things, and that's part of the validation as well.
all right. Well, yeah, in summary, we wanted to make sure we're addressing the foundation of what the FedRAMP team is looking for. We fully expect things to go, much deeper in terms of the conversation. With how we approach these assessments, it's much more intimate than the Rev 5 approach. We are working with each other, collaborating back and forth, doing this on a per KSI level. It's not, hey, let me kick something over the wall, you take a look at it, I'll kick it back. We're on having active conversations so that, we can ensure we are relaying the correct information. But that does wrap things up from my end. I'll hand it back to the floor for any type of Q&A.
Jordan, I want to say, man, that was amazing. That was fantastic. Really comprehensive. Really excited about the way that Coldfire has documented those questions and that approach, and that is about as holistic as it gets. Super impressive. And I love the intimate as a comparison. It's a lot more intimacy here, but hopefully that results in a lot more trust and a lot more value add. So Kenny, going back to you for a minute, I think a lot of what we got in the presentation was about your product. And one of the things that is kind of confusing is that you're obviously a cloud service offering that has a product that is dog fooding your own product as you're looking for your authorization. I wonder if you can give us, or if your team can talk for a few minutes about how you as a company are adopting your own stuff. Like, how are you going to use and build your stuff? Is your environment changing from phase 1 to phase 2? Is it simplifying? Like how are you going to go about using your product? I don't care right now about your customers.
Yeah. No, I would say that we are definitely customer zero. We always have been. The one thing that changes now in phase 2 is, I shared this story with you guys probably before. This was a super embarrassing prototype for a long time. And I just we're like, hey, we'll make a SaaS offering for it. And we were using kind of legacy ingestion for that whole intake thing, where you say, hey, what are you doing for this? And it would produce all this JSON data that we would put into Paramify. what we did in the past for like our FedRAMP High, like Isaac, like we were like with our auditor and they're like, hey, because back then it was like you have a moderate system in there. I think we wanted to use Datadog for something for like observability, and they're like, that's not FedRAMP High, so you can't use it. And so they're like, all right, fine. And so we got Sentinel-1 because they were like, okay, great. There is a SIM that's got FedRAMP High that we don't have to implement Splunk. And so we used Paramify. We kind of had to redo our intake, in Paramify. And what's different now is that all of that intake is actually in platform. So as you change components, those in, how they're implemented, those things change. So we've always used Paramify for implementing our compliance, and we started with FedRAMP High. I don't know, Isaac, you could kind of talk to that because you actually did it in Paramify for us back in the day and in 20x, right?
Yeah, I would say our architecture isn't changing for phase 2 besides the trust center. That's the biggest shift in terms of like kind of adding that component that would be storing some level of sensitive data. But we built a pretty tight architecture from the beginning because Kenny had our goal set on FedRAMP High, and so we haven't had to do a lot of architecture changing in order to meet 20x. The main thing is changing those KSI's status. It used to be that we would self-attest it, and then the auditor would come and say that's correct or not based on the evidence. But now the evidence is really the source of truth through those validators, and so us saying it's implemented or not, we don't control. It's the evidence controls based on the validation. That's the biggest shift in terms of the package submission.
So one of the other interesting things that we're starting to see through phase 1 into phase 2, and I think it's going to end up being a pretty core component of 20x in production, is historical validation and the ability to say, on 364 days out of the last 365, this was configured correctly. Like that's a better indicator of reality than like this is how it is right now. And like talking about Kenny's greens, like if it 364 days it was red, but today it's green, we're not going to pass you, even though it's green right now. Can you talk a little bit about how you're tracking, like everything you showed right now, sort of point in time? Like how are you looking at historical? Are you considering that aspect?
Yep. So I was looking at our dashboard, because we do run scans. We have to, right? So we're running the scans, and because everything is so shifted left, we like literally see nothing on our on our remediation dashboard, which is weird for me, right? But chain guard is pretty cool, right? You're literally shipping vulnerability-free things, and so in our environment, to Isaac's point, is really small. Our goal, if you go to like status.openai.com, you can see, oh, there was an outage, whatever, like a long time ago. That is how we are going to build our trust center, right? Hey, there was an issue here. And you would be able to kind of see this on a continuous basis. The idea is that like, hey, like to Jordan's point, nobody's perfect, right? Things happen, outages happen, mistakes happen, and we want that to be transparent. We really want to shift the whole, straight A student trust center, which is, just not really what is reality, in the space. So that is our goal. I could show you if you want to, like what that looks like in Figma, or if that's good enough, like from a,
That's good enough.
Yeah.
On my team, does anyone have any follow-up questions? So Kenny or Jordan, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how, like within, without going, into any confidential details or anything like that, like how are you structured the agreement for the assessment? Because traditionally, your assessment is like, you're going to come in for this many days, it's going to cost this much dollars up front. Like, how are you managing this in a world where you might need Jordan here for 40 or 80 hours next week and then not? And, what does that look like?
Yeah, I can take that because I kind of do a lot of the paper shuffling over here on the Coldfire side. And so we generally structure most of our engagements on fixed fee. In the FedRAMP Rev 5 world, we've done hundreds of assessments. You kind of reach an average and can understand based on system complexity, the time that goes into it. 20x is a whole new ballpark. We didn't want to shift our model just for the sake of the unknown. And so, we still try to assign a number to it just based off of what we've determined the level of effort to be. I think you've put some stats out there like, hey, in phase 1, we looked at 80 things. Now we're looking at 400. So, I went to Kenny and said, hey, you want to pay 5 times more? He said, hell no. So we didn't charge him that much more, maybe just a little bit more. But yeah, so we have a contract in place. It follows kind of our standard statement of work template, the expected outputs and what we're going to deliver. And, really it's a balanced effort. I kind of have the green light from my leadership to support 20x because this obviously is a future initiative for the program, and FedRAMP is something that we are very invested in as an organization. And so we'd like to continue to stay on the front end of that and not have to be watching from the sidelines.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how that works all along in the long run too. Oh, Kenny's gonna show us history. So pretty. You're on mute, Kenny.
Kenny muted. Yeah.
Me. Okay. Yeah. So this is the approach. There's really like 5 areas, right? So this is very similar to what's already exists, right? Like for continuous monitoring, but you have the things that passed, the things that are partial, the things that are failed, things that aren't set. And then really more important for, those big enterprise teams is like, hey, how much of your evidence is being automatically collected, right? So which ones are like, how many integrations are you using? Are you using, anecdotes or something, right, to collect this? Scripts, right, that are, just from Paramify, or like, what are you uploading and just manually attesting to your validation profile? So that's really it, right? This is what it looks like come January, right? So I thought Sean did really good on that, so I wanted to show him off.
Good job, Sean.
He said, "Good job, Sean."
Super cool. So close this out. Final question on the record. This is a pilot. We're all developing this together. A big part of this is transparency, openness to the community, learning with each other, talking about our experiences so that we all know what's going on throughout this. Do you have any sort of platform that you use to talk about your experiences in the pilot with public that you would like to share for consideration of value?
Yeah, I know Isaac has been really active in GitHub. I always forget my password that I made for that one, so I'm always trying to oh, what is it? And I think I figured that out. I'm really active and supportive of 20x. I'm a believer. I think that it's fun to be one of the platforms that's helping to help kind of bird this into existence. I think, so I'm really active on LinkedIn, and we're pretty positive about our conversations. I don't know if you've seen, but definitely talking about it a lot, and that's the platform I use. And then GitHub's fine too.
Maybe like a podcast. Do you have a podcast as well?
Yeah. What else do you want me to say?
We have the podcast.
Tell us more about this podcast, Mike.
Everyone who's anyone is saying it's the best. Pete listens to it. That's all you need to know. I don't know.
Well, yeah. The Paramify podcast is fantastic. Great place to learn how a lot of different people that Paramify and others have worked with experience things in 20x. And with that, I wish I could play your copyrighted Paramify outro music to show that is the end. So I'm going to stop recording here.